Distinguished parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you once again. Allow me first to express my deep gratitude to all of you, distinguished members of both Houses of Parliament, for your relentless efforts in support of the Iranian people in their strive for freedom and democracy. I would like in particular thank Lord Carlisle, Baroness Boothroyd, Baroness O'Loan, Lord Waddington, Lord Macness, Lord Clark, Lord Alton, Lord Dolakia, Brian Binley, Mark Williams, Matthew Afford, David Ames, Steve McCabe, Joe Benton, Alan Mill, John Leach, David Vaughan, Lady Corbett, and Mr. Boumedra, for your defense of the Ashrafis as the vanguard and source of inspiration for the Iranian people to overthrow the criminal regime and establish democracy in Iran. I would like to very briefly address two issues of importance relating to the current developments in Iran. Almost 2 months after the massacre on 1st of September, the international community has yet failed to hold the government of Iraq accountable for this crime against humanity. 7 hostages remain captive and at risk of being transferred to the religious fascism ruling Iran. The British government, along with the UN, US, and other governments, have condemned the massacre, but they avoid identifying and condemning the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and its masters in Iran. They know all the facts. They have been provided all the details about the attack, including the names of Iraqi commanders on the scene. But they pretend as if they have no evidence on the direct role of the government of Iraq in this crime. They have 2 reasons and 1 excuse. The reasons are economic ties with Iraq and efforts to appease the religious fascism in Iran, which is indeed the ultimate ruler in Iraq. Since these 2 reasons are so disgraceful, one excuse that they claim in private was that Maliki is so vulnerable that we should not exert more pressure on him. This approach is a prelude for another catastrophe. The US and the United Kingdom and some other European countries, by refusing to hold Maliki accountable and lack of a firm approach against the Iraqi government to release hostages, are effectively encouraging Maliki to continue with suppression and killing. I want to warn about the vulnerable security situation in Liberty. Mullahs have explicitly said that Liberty would be next after Ashraf. I appeal to the British people, the Houses of Parliament, and the UK government to take action to prevent another human tragedy. It is time for the Western governments to stand up to the dictator of New Iraq, which they have created, and stop military and trade support to the Iraqi government until the hostages are released and international guarantees for protection of Camp Liberty residents is secured. The British government must answer this question. Why is it refusing to accept sick and wounded residents from Liberty, even those who have already been recognized as refugees by Britain? Honorable members of Parliament, the massacre at Ashraf by the Iraqi forces at the behest of the religious fascism ruling Iran, before anything, is the reflection of the clerical regime's fear of the resistance. Economical crisis, intensifying internal power struggle, and infighting along with growing popular discontent has made the regime more vulnerable and more fearful for its survival. Therefore, they resort to any crime to eliminate the democratic alternative to their regime. Under domestic pressure and international sanction, the regime has also resorted to a show of moderation, hoping once again to create this illusion in the West that perhaps there must be a possibility that the regime might change its behavior. This is a mirage, but with grave consequences for the Iranian people and global peace and security. On the nuclear issue, despite massive propaganda in the West, the negotiator said after return to Iran that we made no commitment there. None of the country's red lines are ever subject to negotiations. He further said, the Iranian negotiating team strongly emphasized the country's absolute rights and added that the nuclear team felt obliged to protect them. At the same time, Rouhani, the regime's president, said diplomatic movement of the government prompted governments around the world to praise democracy in Iran and halt the trend of sanctions against Iran. On nuclear issue, I must caution that there are certain clear benchmarks to be observed by the regime. Otherwise, it has no other intention but deception in order to remove sanctions. They must abide by the Security Council resolutions and stop the enrichment completely, sign additional protocol, and allow undeclared inspection of all declared and undeclared sites. Anything short of this is giving into religious fascism. It is called appeasement and nothing else. I wish to underscore we cannot accept to let the policy of appeasement to lead us to, as Winston Churchill said, to war and shame. I urge this parliament not to allow history be repeated. I have even more important warnings to make. The issue of Iran is not limited only to nuclear. There are two other greater issues: horrifying and systematic violation of human rights and deadly meddling of the regime in the region, particularly in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, and destruction of Iranian people's wealth for its regional warmongering. Over the past few months, the number of executions in Iran have stepped up. More than 250 have been executed since last June. Is this the moderation that based on which UK government is eager to engage and improve relation with the regime? It is time for the government to wake up to realities and support the Iranian people in their struggle for regime change and establish a freedom and democracy. Thank you all.